Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdes, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdes.
And what's up, America? I am Rich Valdes, Valdes with an S, at Rich Valdes on all of the social media. And, of course, our thoughts and prayers are with those that were involved in today's attack. If you want to weigh in on that topic, we're going to be talking about it this evening. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdes. And, of course, online at Rich Valdes with an S. And I want to start with, I guess you've been hearing about this all day, this tragic event. The attack on Christianity continues, right? Last week we were talking about it happening in Africa. Then before that we were talking about it in Syria. Now we're talking about it in the United States. Now, this time it's not radical Islam, but it's radical nonetheless. A trans individual, transsexual. Now, we've had some callers in the past that were trans, and I respect these people for calling in and having the dialogue, and I wish them nothing but the best. But having interviewed some people that transitioned and detransitioned, I can say that this is truly an issue, right? It's an issue within them, and many of them need help, and I think they feel that the help they're getting is to live in the body they think that they're trapped in, or, they're trapped in the wrong body and they're trying to live in the right one. And this faulty, in my opinion, this is faulty medicine. And I say that based on the opinions of many doctors that we've had on this program that say that this is mental illness. This is categorized in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual 4 and 5, or at least 4, as gender dysphoria. And somehow, through activist physicians and activists within the medical industry, they've changed this. And they've changed the idea of how you solve this medical issue rather than through therapy or anything else. They decide if you're a woman that wants to be a man, we will remove your breasts and give you testosterone. If you're a man that wants to be a woman, we will add breasts and give you estrogen. This is problematic. And not because I don't like it per se, and not because I think it's sinful as a matter of fact in my faith. None of those. And while those may be true, it's not that. It's problematic because these people are hurting themselves. They're killing themselves and they're living in pain. And I think there's confusion in the world where people think that they're suffering because of mean people not treating them well and not accepting them. And while that may be a reality for some, that's not the reason they're hurting. That's not the reason that they're trying to escape the body they're in, the issue that has caused them to feel this way. And I'm very sympathetic to these people. I really am. Because I don't wish that on anybody. I had a caller here once tell me, you don't know what it's like to live 30 years as the other internet. And I was like, you know what, you're right. I don't. But I do know that I have children and that I want my children to be safe when they go to school. And that today there are parents out there, at least for 2 children, that don't have those children anymore. And that's brutal. This shooter in Minnesota shot up a church school. It's a male identifying as a female. And they're also dead. And you have to ask yourself, where's the win here? Where's the goodness in this? There's no goodness in any of it. right? Maybe this person who was harming these children is no longer available, no longer alive to hurt other children. It's a horrible situation to be in. I think it's much better if somebody comes to you and says, hey, look, I feel like I'm trapped in the wrong body, that maybe we start getting them the help they need for their mental illness rather than going along with it and getting to this point. Because this should never happen, right? This should never happen. Unbelievable. The individual changed his name from Robert to Robin when he was 17 years old, is according to Breitbart News. Shot and killed 6 innocents. This is the other story that happened in Nashville 2 years ago. And in today's, they shot 2 and injured 17. 2 died. Brutal. Brutal. We always talk about this, and, this goes in 2 directions, right? The first direction it goes in is, so the guns, got to get the guns, right? Of course, that's from the left. And if you say anything about, questioning the mental illness and mental fitness of individuals that are transgender, then you're some sort of phobe. Got it. But the real issue here for me is, why is there no outrage from the left, at least? Because I hear it coming from the right, about helping people, right? Getting people the help they need, helping them so that they don't have this problem. So that we have, for the people that are all the bleeding hearts out there, during every Democrat administration I've seen, for whatever reason, I don't know the reason, they have eliminated more and more mental health facilities. In New York City, when Mayor Giuliani took over, I think I was like 17 years old or something like that, maybe a little younger. And one of the first things he tried to do was get homeless people off the street with some very, very simple logic. Kind of like when you hear President Trump say, I had a meeting with President Putin, Vladimir, and we get along, it's very good. And then say, how do you get along with him? And he says, I think it's a good thing to get along, right? You hear that and you go, wow, that's pretty simple. It's a pretty simple idea. I think it's a good thing to get along. Well, Rudy Giuliani had another simple statement like that, and it was, people shouldn't live in the street and people shouldn't sleep in the street. We shouldn't allow it. We shouldn't allow our fellow man, our neighbors in New York City, to live and sleep on the street. I think it's 100% right. I think that ends the whole conversation. I agree. We should not allow it. We should help them one way or another. Right? This is an emergent situation, in my opinion. So the problem Rudy Giuliani found back then was that there was only this thing called a homeless shelter. There were no, maybe one MSW, right? One social worker that was there, maybe clinical supervisor or something. But for the most part, there was no mental health facility there for them. There was no help there for them. And they've been closing down more and more and more mental health facilities. Why would we close down these mental health facilities? Why do we have so many laws that prevent people from being... Now, I understand you don't want to incarcerate someone into a mental health facility unless they absolutely need to, right? They've been sentenced to a judge and maybe a panel of doctors. But there are situations where this stuff has to happen, right? You have to be able to get people the help they need. And that's not happening. So my question for all the listeners, why do Democrats like to close down mental hospitals? Why do they support mentally ill people staying mentally ill and then blaming guns and blaming everything else and not getting people the help they need? When you have a group of people and you know that they are extraordinarily high in the suicide category, why on earth aren't we trying to manage the root cause? Instead of saying, oh, we need awareness. More people need to know. Don't bother the trans people. No, that's not the answer. They're not killing themselves because people are mean, contrary to popular belief. They're killing themselves because they can't live this life that they're living unnaturally. That's why they got into this. because they couldn't tolerate the life they were currently living. So they're trying to live it as someone else. This is not a fault on them. This is just a matter of fact. And we can't sit there and, turn our backs on people and say, oh, we don't like your choice, so, you don't get no help. We need mental affirming care. Anyway, I want to get to the bottom of this because crime is clearly a problem in America's largest cities. We're seeing homegrown terrorists that are being created by way of mental illness, terrorizing schools. This shouldn't happen. And New York City's headed in this direction. So is the rest of the country. If we don't get common sense solutions and good politicians in office that have their feet planted on the ground. So we're going to have some additional conversation on this straight ahead because I'm looking forward to a series of robust conversations this evening, not the least of which are coming up right after this pause. So don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
At this point, we know we have a total of 19 victims from this tragedy. 2 were young children, ages 8 and 10, that were sitting in the pews at Mass when they were shot and killed. They were pronounced deceased on the scene. There were another 14 children between the ages of 6 and 15 that were injured by gunfire. There were also 3 adults in their 80s that were parishioners here attending Mass that were also shot in this incident. The families of all of the children that have been affected have been notified. The coward that shot these victims took his own life in the rear of the church.
The coward took his own life. And this is the story that's gripping the nation right now. 2 beautiful little souls killed, 17 people injured, 19 victims overall. And I want to get to the bottom of this because we've seen crime in New York City. We've seen crime across the country. Now we're seeing acts of terrorism by transgender individuals here. And we've seen it before. It's a trend, and it's a trend that doesn't go addressed. And in New York City, we've seen a very similar trend with people that are emotionally disturbed, people that have mental illness, and they have not gotten the help that they need because the government is not even scratching where it itches. And there's only one person out there that's been not only doing it apart from the government, apart from his work with the Guardian Angel Safety Patrol. Curtis Sliwa has been out there. During COVID, he was leading the charge with those guys in the red berets all over the subways, all over the streets, making sure that the homeless who had nowhere to go during COVID, were getting the help that they needed. And many of them are dealing with these types of mental issues. And I want to get his thoughts on today's incident because I think this is as much an act of terrorism as it is a mental health crisis in our country. Curtis Sliwa, welcome, sir.
My hands across America mourning for the dead and those many injured in Minneapolis, a city that I remember was a bastion of Fortune 500 companies, was a great place to live before the summer of George Floyd, and has just been scarred and pillared by crimes of violence. This one, just one of many now, that, as you pointed out, seem to be committed by transgender terrorists who are organizing in some instances, who have manifestos like we saw in Memphis, Tennessee. And if you remember, we weren't allowed to know what was in that manifesto for over a year, which is nonsensical, should be transparent. But there is a movement to radicalize transgenders, to get them to commit acts of violence because maybe they're mad at their circumstances, mad at themselves, and they want to take it out on the world. And as was mentioned in your piece, Rich, the coward then turns the gun on themselves and blasts themselves into the hereafter. It's sort of like if you're angry with yourself, you want to do self-harm. I'm not espousing that you kill yourself, but better that you kill yourself and put yourself out of your misery than shoot and kill and maim and injure so many innocent people.
Yeah, Curtis Sliwa, and again, I just want to remind the audience, that was Brian O'Hara, the Minneapolis police chief, giving a press conference earlier today. And, you know, Curtis, I look at this and I think Minneapolis, again, not to put a microscope on them, but this did happen there. Minneapolis has been falling by the wayside for years. And we've seen it happen, like, I don't know, the last 4 or 5 years. More problems. You start to look at the leadership there. And you've got these communist sympathizing individuals, especially the Minnesota governor. All right, when you see this, it's got to scare you a little bit, or at least give you pause when you see that you have that same brand of radical that's looking to govern New York City.
Oh, exactly. Zoran Mandami and the Zoranistas who pose a threat on New York. But if we could just go back to Minneapolis, you remember that infamous scene where they burned down that police station and declared war on all of America. That's
the summer of love
in my mindset.
Yeah.
And the boy mayor at that time did nothing. The governor, who was soon to run as the vice president for then Vice President Harris, running against Trump and Vance. And I remember the city council president was a transgendered radical who, if you remember, wanted to disband the police, but all of a sudden, because of threats against her, he, they, I forget, what are the pronouns that we're supposed to use, Rich? I know Trump has said we don't got to use them anymore, but what were the pronouns that we would have to use in referencing somebody who decided to become a transgender? Do you remember them?
It was Z and Zer, and they and them are the ones I remember.
Well, anyway, this woman who had been a man was city council president, and you may have remembered she led the effort to defund the police. And then when she was under threat, like Zoran Mandami, same situation except he's not a transgender. But then they wanted police protection, and she was protected by private security that had to be hired by the taxpayers at incredible expense, armed private security that happened to be off-duty Minneapolis police officers trying to augment their salary. Again, do as I say, not as I do. Zoran Mandami wanted social workers instead of cops for average, everyday people in New York City. But when he became subject of threats, now he has a 24-hour security provided by the NYPD on-duty police officers that he would remove from duty. He hates, he has no love for, and they are assigned to protect him 24/7, 365, drive him around in a taxpayer-funded, gas-guzzling SUV. And why the double standard, Rich?
Well, because he's a Democrat, that's what Democrats do. Curtis, hang with me. Folks, we're coming right back with Curtis Sliwa. We're going to continue our conversation on crime in America with Curtis Sliwa, founder of the Guardian Angels, candidate for mayor of New York City. Don't go anywhere. Curtis Sliwa is coming right back with me, Rich Valdes.
I want to say to you that I really appreciate what you're doing for people and their state of mind and their viewpoints on the airwaves every night. I really do appreciate it.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
Reaction was that this is a good thing. I think that the governor as well as the mayor should be on board with it just so we can get a bit more of security in Chicago the way that we need.
The crime has dropped since 2024. Do you feel like the city feels safer?
No, not at all. No, especially with the police being defunded.
So you've got a Chicago resident doing a man-on-the-street interview with CNN, and, of course, they're getting responses and didn't go as they thought about it. Obviously, this woman's saying she's all for Trump sending in the National Guard into Chicago. Another clip I have, a little longer, I'm not going to play that one, is of a reporter in the Oval Office taking questions from President Trump, and takes a moment to tell the president that she's very grateful for what he's doing. She lives in D.C. She's made her career there, and that she'd be dead because she was pistol whipped on the streets of D.C. And now she's able to start her own family, and she's expecting a child. It's a beautiful moment. Maybe I'll play the clip later. But Curtis Sliwa is our guest. Curtis Sliwa is the candidate for mayor in New York City. He won the Republican nomination, and he is, in my opinion, the front runner for this. He's well positioned against three Democrats that don't differ much in policy, just in name. And Curtis Sliwa, I want to talk about your thoughts on what's happening in D.C., what's happening in Chicago, and more. Welcome back.
Well, I'm an expert on those cities because I have guardian angels who have been patrolling the million-tough streets of the nation's capital for over 20 years. Southeast Anacostia, right near the Potomac River.
Now, Curtis, let me just remind the audience that you have chapters of the Guardian Angels Safety Patrol Group, not only all over the United States, but all over the world in the 46 years that you've been doing this. And I think some people might lose sight of that. So when you say you really know these streets, it's because you've been on these streets doing these patrols in D.C., doing these patrols in Chicago.
Yeah, and as violent as D.C. has been in the past, and this goes back to the crackhead mayor, Marion Barry, who was sent to jail, and then when he came out, they elected him the city council person for Southeast Anacostia. It was crazy, but they never had kids carjacking. In all the years that I was in D.C. organizing Guardian Angels, and it's always been a very violent place like nearby Baltimore, which is nicknamed Body Bag City. We have Guardian Angels there. They never had 14, 15-year-olds with 9mm carjacking you the moment you stop your car at a red light in an intersection. And this became systemic, not only in Southeast Anacostia, but in Northwest, because Washington, D.C. is a very small city and within proximity of the Capitol buildings itself. And that's when all of a sudden Donald Trump, our president, said enough is enough, brought in the National Guard. Easier to do there because it's already a federal city. I like the fact that he's going into Chirac, as Spike Lee's movie renamed Chicago Chirac. Remember with Samuel Jackson? Chirac, because it is, especially South Chicago, the South Side, and also the West Side. The West Side being the worst. You have Black Gangster Disciples. You have Vice Lords. These are vicious gangs. And then you have all these new Central and South American gangs that have moved in there with the illegal aliens. And so Johnson, the socialist mayor, has actually made it even more difficult for the Chicago police to rein in the gangs than it was before. And it's basically a criminal haven. It'll be great to see the National Guard moving in and isolating certain areas so people can once again, like we see in D.C., come out of their home, walk around at night, not fear being a victim of a drive-by shooting or a carjacking. So you got to give a lot of props to the president, and especially his announcement that any cities or states or communities that have no cash bail laws, first implemented in New York State by Andrew Cuomo, who was the governor, will have their federal funds withheld. And that's what you call fiscal pain compliance. That's the only way to get their attention, because it's the no cash bail laws that have led to an explosion of criminal activity and violent crimes in a lot of cities, especially north of the Mason-Dixon line.
Folks, we're on with Curtis Sliwa. Curtis Sliwa is the founder of the Guardian Angels Safety Patrol Group, and he's running for mayor in the city of New York. He ran for mayor in 2021, getting nearly 30% of the vote. And for a first-time candidate, I thought that was really good. A lot of people forget Curtis Sliwa, but Rudy Giuliani, who's known as America's mayor, he is tough on crime. He ran for mayor of the city of New York, not once, not twice, but 3 times in order to win, and served with distinction. I salute the mayor. And In fact, something else people may not know, there was a group, a safety patrol group, that was very helpful to Mayor Giuliani in cleaning up New York City back in the 90s. Tell us about that.
Yep. In fact, prior to Rudy Giuliani winning the mayoralty against then David Dinkins, who presided over a city that averaged 2,000 murders a year, 10,000 unsolved shootings, as bad as it has become of late in New York City, there's nothing comparable to that. And then Rudy Giuliani went to work knocking down that violent crime rate by empowering the cops, letting them go out and do their job, unhandcuffing the police, because it's not like he had new police. He had the same police that the previous mayor, David Dinkins, had. He just allowed them to go out and do their jobs. And one of the things that he ordered the police department to do was, after our 13 years of involvement patrolling the subways, the streets, and the parks of New York City, he said, I want you to partner up with the Guardian Angels. I don't want you making this an adversarial situation. I don't want you targeting Guardian Angels for arrest. It's the best of what our city can produce. They're volunteers. It doesn't cost the taxpayers any money. And once Rudy did that in 1993, it paved the way for us to be officially accepted all throughout the world, all throughout the United States. And finally, in our mothership connection, New York City, we were working with the police instead of having the police chase us down to lock us up and try to basically suppress the development and growth of the Guardian Angels.
Yeah, and that's a point I want to make sure people understand, because I've heard some rhetoric out there, and whenever I have the chance, I try to correct it. But what better way to correct it than to get it right from the source? There are some people, including someone I'm incredibly fond of. I call him El Trumpito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States, who's now serving with distinction as the 47th president of the United States, who may have been given information that is not accurate by people around them, that you have been a perennial candidate and have ran and lost in multiple elections. And as far as I know, and as far as my research has shown me, for New York City mayor, you've only run once in 2021 and won the primary, losing to Eric Adams. Is that correct?
That is correct, Rich Valdes. But I think President Donald Trump knows that my history in New York City dates his beginnings, and Chuck Schumer and Al Slim Shady Sharpton. There were four of us who were making headlines through the 70s, 80s, 90s
Yes.
that eventually led to Schumer being impotent, Al Slim Shady Sharpton being the biggest racist of America, Donald Trump becoming president, and Curtis Sliwa running for mayor. He assumes I ran multiple times. I've only run twice.
Right,
and I have
you're always
a
on
really
TV.
good chance. A really good chance of saving the city this time with four candidates: Zoran Mandami and his Zoranistas, Eric Adams, hopelessly corrupt, Andrew Cuomo, who's a perv, a creep. You can't trust him in a room alone with a woman. And then, of course, Curtis Sliwa. Everybody loves Curtis Sliwa, but now I got to get him to come out and vote and make me the mayor who can save this city.
Curtis, I see very little difference between Mr. Mamdani, Mr. Cuomo, Mr. Adams. I look at Mr. Cuomo, and I heard you give him a nickname. I loved it. It was called Cashless Bail Cuomo, Cashless Cuomo, who signed that into law in 2020, pretty much sealing the fate of New York. And, of course, Mr. Mamdani coming right behind him with his communist tendencies, looking to put the final nail in the coffin, as you've eloquently put it. And then you've got Mayor Adams. And some people think, well, leave good enough alone. It's not good enough. A woman was set on fire on a New York City subway. The Roosevelt Hotel was turned into not only a sanctuary hotel, but it was turned into a recruitment ground for the most violent gangs that President Trump's still fighting against right now, Tren de Aragua and MS-13. So these three guys, in my opinion, are single-handedly responsible for so much of the demise and crime in New York City. How anybody could consider them is beyond me. But in my opinion, again, politically speaking, mathematically speaking, it seems to me that you have, and this is analysis I got from Brian Lehrer from NPR, big lefty, as well as Errol Lewis on New York One, that you have the best opportunity to go kind of straight into Gracie Mansion, because you don't need to get this big number that they're going to have to fight over.
Oh, there's no doubt. Now, isn't that incredible? Liberals, progressives, Democratic Socialists see that. And yet, Rich, our own Republicans are hemming and hawing and wondering if Curtis can be elected. Well, let me tell you, like Rudy Giuliani got elected in 1992, that was quickly followed by George Pataki upsetting Mario Cuomo, who it was thought would go on to run for the president of the United States on the Democratic Party line. You ended up with 8 years of no chaos, no corruption under Giuliani. 12 years of Republican governorship, no chaos, no corruption, with a guy that nobody knew you couldn't pick out of a police lineup if your life depended on it. That's George Pataki. And then 12 years of Michael Bloomberg with the longest-serving police commissioner in the history of New York, Raymond Kelly. Again, no chaos, no corruption. Then we went back to the three amigos. We went to Bill de Blasio, Cuomo for governor, Eric Adams for mayor. And what have we had? Crime, chaos, corruption. So, Rich, I ask your audience, how can I be any worse? How can I do any worse than the Democrats have done in putting the city in the abyss? And I must warn national Republicans who are now toying with the idea, let Zoran Mondani win as the mayor of New York, because that'll be a guarantee we can win the midterm elections. We'll make Zoran Mondani, the communist socialist, the poster child of the Democratic Party, and then that'll pave the way for Elise Stefanik to become the next governor and beat Hochul.
Speaking of Elise Stefanik, Curtis, I want to just remind everybody that Elise Stefanik, the chair of the Republican conference in Washington, D.C., a huge MAGA person, she's endorsed you. Mark Levin, the great one, Mark Levin, has endorsed you for mayor of the city of New York. This guy on the radio at night, Rich Valdes, he's endorsed you. You've got a lot of conservatives that have come behind you. So I think that people are, ending their vacation days and they're getting in gear. Curtis, stick with me for just a couple of more minutes if you can. I need to take a pause right here. Amigos, we're coming back, hopefully, with Curtis Sliwa.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S.
When New York City was attacked by terrorists, radical Islamic Islamists on 9/11/2001, America's Mayor Rudy Giuliani rose to the occasion to keep America together. He really did, passing it over to Mayor Bloomberg at the time. Mayor Giuliani we've had him on the program. He's somebody I hold in high regard. He's a national treasure, in my opinion. He's a national hero. And he's someone that when he still lived in New York back in 2021, when Curtis first ran, he endorsed Curtis Sliwa. No bigger MAGA person besides Trump, than Rudy Giuliani endorsed Curtis Sliwa in 2021. Now it's 2025. Giuliani's in Florida, but there's still a bunch of big names out there. Sean Hannity endorsing Curtis Sliwa, getting behind him for mayor of the city of New York. The great one, Mark Levin, getting behind Curtis Sliwa, giving him his endorsement for mayor of the city of New York in 2025. Rich Valdes, add me to that list. If you want to help Curtis Sliwa, if you want to see New York City get the guardian angel that New York City deserves to protect the rest of this country from falling by the wayside, you need to get your people in New York to vote for Curtis Sliwa, and you need, no matter where in the country you are, if it's drive time right now in Oahu, in Hawaii, we're on there. I want you to take a minute and think about putting your hand all the way to the bottom of your pocket and sending whatever you can to Curtis's campaign. Why? Because that's how elections are won and lost. If you're in L.A., if you're in Chicago, if you're in Florida, I had a caller call in recently and say, I signed up to do $10 a month, automatic payments to Curtis Sliwa's campaign. This guy's got the right idea. If you got 1,000, I recommend giving 1,000. But the reality is we all have to give. And I'm going to put Curtis on this show as often as I can to talk about the issues of the day because he knows what he's talking about. He's been a crime fighter for 46 years. And he's truly the man that New York City needs right now because New York City needs a guardian angel. So that being said, Curtis Sliwa, if people want to donate to your campaign, if they want to learn more about the campaign that's been endorsed by Hannity and Levin and Elise Stefanik, the Republican conference chair, huge MAGA influencer, how do they learn more?
Well, first off, an additional big-time voice, many, many years, Bill O'Reilly has endorsed my campaign. So those who are out there like Sean Hannity, the rock-ribbed all-American conservative voice of reason from Franklin Square, Long Island, have said, we know this guy, Curtis. We've seen what he's done in New York City and around the country. He's got the right stuff. So if you'd like to assist my campaign to save New York City, and more importantly, Rich, with all the people listening to you now, if you'd like to stop New York City residents from fleeing to your communities and turning red states purple and maybe blue, help me keep the people in New York City by helping me become the next mayor. Go to Sliwa for NYC.com. That's Sliwa, FORNYC.com.
Again, and folks, that's SLIWA, 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 FOR NYC.com, Sliwa for NYC.com. Curtis, you're a gentleman, you're a scholar, you're a patriot. I want to thank you for being here, and we'll be in touch again next week or the week after to get another update on the campaign trail.
My pleasure. My hands across America as we mourn the loss of those children in Minneapolis and the injuries to so many more. Let's hope we can put an end to this, Rich.
Amen. Amen to that, brother. God bless you. And amigos, your thoughts, your calls, your reactions to everything happening from Minnesota to Chicago to New York City. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdes.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, amigos, welcome back to the phones we go. Open Phone America, starting right now. I want to get to your thoughts, calls, reactions. Eduardo, Tampa, Florida, streaming the show, richvaldes.com. Go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, good evening, Rich. So I was telling your screener, the young people here are always on social media. They don't have any friends. There's a report where they're holding off on getting driver's license. So that's the unfortunate story of young people. And we got to get these young people because we want them voting Republican.
Yeah, listen, I'm with you. I think there's an isolation issue, and we've had America's psychiatrist on the program, Dr. Carol Lieberman. She's said it many times that these people are oftentimes loners. They're isolated. They're involuntarily celibate because they can't meet women. They can't pick up women. They don't know how to get women. And if you don't go out, that's obviously the next result. And they have all this pent-up anger and bad ideas. This guy, for example, he had the name of 3 different school shooters written on one of the magazines of his guns. He had things written all over these guns. One of them was "Kill Donald Trump" on those guns. I mean, this guy is a real whack job. And it's a shame to see everything that's happening in the world, especially what happened today. Eduardo, thank you for the call. I appreciate it, brother. Godspeed to you. And amigos, the rest of your calls and more are coming up as we continue the program. For some of you, this is the end of the road. Then if so, then I say to you, hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. But everybody else, I'll be right back. I'm Rich Valdes.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdes. America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdes.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? It's Rich Valdes. I'm back for another hour. Thank you for joining the show. Our number, if you want to join us, it's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDES, at Rich Valdes on all of the social media, and of course, richvaldes.com if you want to stream the show. And I want to get into some of what happened today. Today's news. There's a lot out there. It's 7 minutes past the top of the hour, and the biggest story, of course, is still this transgender individual that slaughtered 2 children, injuring at least 17 others at a Catholic school in Minneapolis. He's been identified as a transgender woman, which means he was born a male and now lives as a female, legally changed his name from Robert Westman to Robin Westman. And he opened fire through a stained glass window of a church. It's called Church at the Annunciation Catholic School, or it's called the Annunciation Catholic School, and it's the church that was there. I'm not sure how they wrote this. And they were at Mass, back to school Mass, filled with kids, 8:30 in the morning today, Wednesday. Just absolute shame. And this guy is absolute coward. He posted a bunch of videos on YouTube, including his manifesto, which apparently every school shooter needs to have. And all of this, again, was according to Police Chief Brian O'Hara, who confirmed all of this stuff at a press conference earlier today. And he also mentioned, and I have a clip of this, the mayor mentioning it, Jacob Frey, that you know, this can't be one of these things where we just say, oh, I'm so sorry this happened. You know, we give you our thoughts and prayers. Of course we're giving thoughts and prayers. But we need to do more because this should never happen. Check out this clip from Mayor Jacob Frey.
And don't just say this is about thoughts and prayers right now. These kids were literally praying. It was the first week of school. They were in a church. These are kids that should be learning with their friends. They should be playing on the playground. They should be able to go to school or church in peace without the fear or risk of violence, and their parents should have the same kind of assurance.
I agree with him. Listen, God bless them. God bless everybody that was there, those that are now victims of violent crime, witnesses to the violent crime, of course, praying for the family members that lost these children. Their souls are guaranteed to be with the Lord. But, man, I mean, just 17 others shot, or injured, rather. Horrible thing, right? And this is an attack on Christianity as much as it is an act of terror, whether it was part of his rationale or not. In effect, it is. And this guy's got these videos where he's talking about all sorts of things. He seems very happy to fantasize about doing crazy things. At one point, there's a quote in one of the videos where he's fantasizing about being that scary, horrible monster standing over those powerless kids. And he was, you know, sharing admiration for the Sandy Hook shooting that happened back in 2012. I mean, just crazy. This is, you know, he did the world a favor today when he killed himself, but not before he hurt precious innocent people. Praying, right? Children praying in church. Very, very sad. Very, very sad indeed. So again, as we learn more about this stuff and we learn more about the manifesto from this individual, I'll let you know more. But it's just very sad. I'm looking at the one of these books, one of his manifesto books, and he's got all these Cyrillic letters. I don't know what's influencing him, with like little unicorns on them. I mean, just bizarre. He's got a pretty good arsenal, a lot of clips. All of these magazines, all of the clips for the guns, they're all written on in like a white marker or a silver marker. One says, "Where is your God?" Another one says, "Suck on this." Another one says, I can't read all of it. F something that you stand for. Really just, really bad. Really, really bad. This is like a serious level of disturbedness that, I don't know. I mean, I guess these guys either become masters at concealing their crazy, and I hate to use that word, but it's the one that rolls off the tongue right now. They become masters of disguise, or we as a community are just not noticing enough and not trying to help those people. And I think it's the latter in many cases. I believe that many times we get behind someone saying, I was born a boy, but now I'm a girl, and I support this. And now you're like, oh, that's very brave. We celebrate that. That's awesome. And, you see parents doing it to their kids. This isn't cool. This isn't okay. And we should never, ever have to endure a day like this again. Really just horrible stuff. Anyway, I'm going to get into a few things tonight. The issue of crime is not just happening in Minneapolis with this school shooting, but you've got instances in Washington, D.C., you've got instances everywhere. Earlier I mentioned a clip from a reporter that was standing in the White House, and she mentioned, she seems like an Asian American from the video I saw. This was reported on Fox News, and she's speaking with President Trump in the Oval Office, and she instead of asking a question, she shares a story, a personal story of what happened to her when she was held at gunpoint in Washington, D.C., and this is very moving. Listen to this.
More than 2 years ago, it was a Saturday morning in broad daylight. I was on my way to work, and a young man with a black ski mask pointed a gun at my face and threatened me to hand over my phone, my wallet, my laptop, and everything else. And when I refused, he used the butt of his handgun to strike me across the face, in the cheek, or what some people call pistol whip me, before running away. And that has deeply traumatized myself and my family. Ever since, I've never dared to walk in the street of DC at night, ever. And my family was extremely worried. So, Mr. President, thank you so much for what you're doing right now. Because
for being honest.
Such incidents involve not just me, but also my family. If he had shot me, I could have died right there in the middle of nowhere without my families or my friends knowing at the age of back then, I think 23.
Right.
Just starting my career here in DC without even starting a family. But now I'm very blessed to have this opportunity
So
to
you had a
stand
gun
before
pointed
you.
at your head, and you probably figured that he's going to pull the trigger because these are animals that don't know what the hell. They couldn't care less. The pulling the trigger to him is a very minor event, and I'm sure he's done it before. So how did you? And you did refuse to give it.
Correct.
Which would probably, maybe somebody would say that was not the right decision, right?
Right.
But
My
you
friends did
refused,
call
but I
me
understand
crazy
that.
after.
So, and then he hit you real hard.
Yes.
It's really amazing that you weren't shot. That was,
I'm very blessed, and that's why having this opportunity to stand here to share my story today. One, I'm very grateful for God for allowing me to still survive to this day, but also to Mr. President. Thank you for now making DC safer
Thank you very much.
for us, for our families, for my parents, on my behalf of my parents, and now my baby on the way. Thank you so much.
And I thought that was a beautiful moment that I'm guessing many in the media wouldn't share because it's probably too flowery, too nice, not, the saying, if it bleeds, it leads. But I wanted to share it because I have a daughter, right? I have two of them. One of them just turned 24. She's in the same place. She's starting her career. She's not in Jersey anymore. She's in a new place. And I think about her all the time. And I'm always concerned. Thankfully, she's in a safer place and she's in a red state. But, man, nobody wants that for their kids, right? People want their kids to go places and be safe and be well. and not have to deal with getting, a young lady getting held at gunpoint and pistol whipped as she's getting robbed. That's insanity. But this is what is happening right now in America. And I don't know that we'll ever live in a place or a time where there's no crime. But I do know you have to be tough on crime. You have to let the criminals know we're not tolerating that. Something that's happening right now in Washington, D.C., where you've got the National Guard backing up federal troops that are on the streets with the Metropolitan Police, making sure that these streets are safer. They've gone now 2 weeks, I think, without a homicide. Why? Because there's cops everywhere. And I know critics are going to say, oh, so that's the answer, Rich, make it a police state? Well, I guess yes. You make it a police state until you've isolated the problem of killing people dying in, on your watch. So you do what you've got to do. I think it's a police state when you don't have the excuse of, let's ease back on this and let's not have as many troops involved, as many cops involved, and see if you can maintain some of that status quo, some of that safety. But right now, the building's on fire. You got to send in the fire department. Anyway, I want to get into that. We're going to talk about crime in America. But first, I want to bring in a guest to talk about something that is important, right? Very, very important. August 25th marked the anniversary of the death of 13 service members in Afghanistan at Abbey Gate. And President Trump spoke about that and then committed to relaunching an investigation into Abbey Gate and the attack that ensued there, because these families are still out there and they have a lot of questions. So we're going to have some conversation on crime, some conversation on that, and lots of other conversation as well straight ahead. Tyler Gray from the hit CBS television show is going to be joining us momentarily. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
This is a very special group of people.
Surrounded by families who lost loved ones, President Trump signs a proclamation honoring the 4th anniversary of the Abbey Gate bombing.
There are some great souls that are looking down on you right now.
The tragedy happened as the U.S. was hastily withdrawing from Afghanistan under former President Biden. A suicide bomber targeted the airport in Kabul, killing 13 U.S. service members and about 170 Afghans.
This is a moment I'll never forget. I remember exactly where I was standing. I was in our Joint Operations Center when that happened, and I'll never forget the feeling in the pit of my stomach watching the smoke rise. And then we just waited to hear how bad it was.
The Biden administration was heavily criticized for the attack, and there's been numerous investigations by Congress and the Pentagon into how the withdrawal was executed. But the Trump administration wants more answers and is conducting its own review.
It's a top priority for us. We're getting access to all the documents necessary, why decisions were made, why they weren't made, why certain force protection measures were ignored. These families deserve answers.
The Defense Department says its report will be completed next year.
So that's a report there on this Abbey Gate proclamation and President Trump's commitment, along with Secretary Hegseth, to give another look at this and get the families the answers they're looking for. I want to talk about this because, again, for years we've talked about how this affected so many people, and we still don't have, I think, the answers that we're looking for. So I want to bring in somebody who's a former Delta Force operator. He's the author of the book Forged in Chaos, a warrior's origin story. And he's now an actor. He's the star of a show called SEAL Team on CBS television. Tyler Gray, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me again.
You bet. Let's dig into this and, give me your thoughts as a veteran, and thank you for your service, on the thoughts here of, losing the 13 people we lost, plus everything President Trump just outlined, numerous people that were, maimed and injured.
Yeah, well, one of the things I wanted to mention is, you keep hearing the term used, which is withdrawal. And to me, the term, words mean something, and the last administration was trying to change that. For instance, you heard the word vaccine. That's not what a vaccine means. A vaccine means I can't get it again, right? It means I'm immune to it, right? And the term they used was withdrawal. To me, it wasn't a withdrawal. That was an evacuation. And if you really think about it, withdrawal, just the word withdrawal is not what happened. It really felt and was executed more like an evacuation.
For sure.
And so that's what I've been calling it, because again, I mean, I was in Afghanistan, in first in 2002, and right after the tail end of Operation Anaconda, I was part of the groups that built the first outstations along the Pakistani border. And, I got to say, it's never in a million years would I have thought in 2002 that what would have happened, whatever it was, 1920, whatever the number was later. And it is, I'm going to go on a limb here because there's multiple things. It's got to be one of the most shameful things that has been executed by our government in the last, 30 years at least.
Yeah, and that says a lot, considering there's been a lot of things that have happened in those 30 years. Amigos, we're on with Tyler
absolutely.
Gray. He's an actor and former Delta Force operator, served in Afghanistan, and weighing in on this fourth anniversary of Abbey Gate and the massacre that took place there by a suicide bomber. And I love what you said. I think you hit the nail on the head for sure. Framing it the right way as the Abbey Gate or the Afghanistan evacuation. And totally was that. I mean, I remember seeing the video of the military plane trying to take off and people climbing on the wings and on the landing gear. And, I'd never seen anything like that. People older than me said, we saw that at the airlift back and when, but I'd never seen that in my life. And I was like, wow, that is wild.
Yeah.
And it just blew me away that this is, it's not what I expected from our government, from our military. And it was shocking. And then, of course, when you hear that that's coupled with these senseless killings by this suicide bomber, it's very disheartening. Tyler Gray, I want to get your thoughts on a couple of other things with respect to the military. In particular, President Trump's use of the military in a bunch of domestic cities that are having crime problems via the National Guard. And even, with some external stuff, people say he's rattling the cage with Maduro in Venezuela, and that's unnecessary. I want to get your thoughts on all of that stuff when we return. Amigos, we're coming right back with Tyler Gray. He's an actor, former real-life Delta Force operator, and the author of the book Forged in Chaos, A Warrior's Origin Story. Don't go anywhere. It's Rich Valdes coming right back with Tyler Gray.
Well, thank you so much for having me back on, Rich. I always enjoy talking to you.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
If it doesn't require immigration authority to make an arrest, they can do things like transportation, infrastructure, intelligence, and support mechanism, and that's what they're going to do. And that puts more ICE officers badging guns on the street because they're going to do the duties that don't require that badging gun and immigration authority. So they're a force multiplier. It helps us arrest a bad guy quicker, and it makes it more efficient.
So what we were learning even before this interview with Trump's top immigration official is the Pentagon confirming earlier today to News Nation that 1,700 National Guard troops are going to be mobilized in the coming weeks to 19 states. You're looking at those states on your screen. Some of them include Alabama, Florida, Texas, Virginia. but 19 states in total. And Texas is actually expected to see the largest Guard presence. And the Pentagon stating operations will continue at least through mid-November, and they could go further than that.
That's a report from News Nation on Border Czar Tom Homan saying that the National Guard will be a force multiplier in these 19 states, with giving a little under 100 National Guard members to work alongside folks in ICE and HSI and other, federal law enforcement positions. And I want to get a perspective on this from somebody you've seen on television on the CBS show SEAL Team, and in real life, he's a retired Delta Force operator. Tyler Gray is with us. He wrote the book Forged in Chaos, A Warrior's Origin Story. And Tyler, having experience in this and, the famous line people say, I'm not a whatever, but I play one on TV. You get to say both, right? I am a whatever, and I play one on TV. And the fact that we've got, folks in the National Guard out there supporting the men and women in ICE, doing what they're doing on many different levels, from serving warrants to, fugitive transfers at local courts and whatnot. This is no small task, in my opinion. Your thoughts?
Yeah, the National Guard, and I'm going to kind of, if you don't mind, I'm going to kind of lump in the National Guard in D.C. into this, if you don't mind.
Of course.
It's all easy to speak to together because it's all the National Guard. But, one thing I don't know if all Americans are familiar with is a law called posse comitatus.
Yeah.
And look, I agree with it. Posse comitatus states that the U.S. military cannot operate on domestic soil. I think we all know why this law was put into place was so the federal government cannot use U.S. troops against U.S. citizens. Obviously, this came down, during the first years of the country, et cetera. I do think there are some exceptions that probably could come up on the counterterrorism side, but that's neither here nor there. That was my specialty. But the real point that I want to make here that people are, going nuts about the military in D.C. and the critical point is that it's not the military, and I'm not saying the National Guard isn't the military, but what I'm saying is the National Guard is a state asset, and it can be called up by federal, but it's not full-time troops. The National Guard, when they're not activated, they are people with normal jobs. They're doctors, they're lawyers, they're business owners, they're whoever they are. They do 1 week in a month and 2 weeks a year in the National Guard. And the reason I bring that up is people need to stop, certain people need to stop acting like it's this, evil military that's patrolling the streets of D.C. This is people that are regular civilians for the vast majority of the year, except when they put a uniform on in that limited amount of time. And I think if those people really saw them for who they were, and for that matter, the U.S. military, we're all Americans here. We're not, jackbooted thugs that are here to harm American citizens. And the more that people portray us that way, it's just inaccurate. And the same thing along the border. You've got those National Guard who, again, are generally not active duty, or generally aren't active duty, and are doing their best to help out federal law enforcement, patrol the border, and reduce the border crisis that's obviously been an issue for several years now.
Yeah, and I get it. I think you're right. It's an important distinction. These are citizen soldiers. These are people from your community that signed up to serve, and to do that in these emergent situations, which D.C. finds itself in, as do others, and they're rising to the challenge. I want you to hear a clip because you brought up D.C. I have a clip of Mayor Bowser in D.C., and it's interesting because she's kind of tongue-in-cheek saying, thanks, President Trump, but she just doesn't have the gall to really say thank you to President Trump. Check this out.
The next couple of days, I will issue a mayor's order that spells out how our Emergency Operations Center will continue to engage with the federal Clean and Safe and Beautiful Task Force and ensure that task force resources continue to be strategically deployed in the district. This is what we think in just a couple of weeks of experience has worked. Having more federal law enforcement officers on the street. We think having more stops that got to illegal guns has helped. We think that there's more accountability in the system, or at least perceived accountability in the system, that is driving down illegal behavior. We know that we have had fewer gun crimes, fewer homicides, and we have experienced an extreme reduction in carjackings.
Wow, that's great. I can't wait till Mayor Bowser says something like, we don't have any more carjackings. But I'm glad to see, her acknowledging that this has actually worked, Tyler Gray.
Yeah, you can hear in her voice, for lack of a better term, the political handcuffs she's wearing. Her political affiliation, she would be panned by her side if she came out and said, let's be honest, what it sounds like she feels. And it's just sad that we live in a nation right now that is so politically polarized that people can't say what they feel and can't express when they go against, when they have experience with something working that goes against their political party's belief. We should live in a society where we can go, you know what, that's not my normal side. Hey, but this worked. They were right on this one. And the fact that they can't even admit that is very scary that we're living in that current political climate.
Tyler Gray, the point you bring up is such an important one. We literally have a political party in the United States that, in my opinion, has been pro-crime. They call themselves progressives. They coddle criminals. And this seems to be accepted, and it's being adopted in so many cities across the country. What's your take on this? Is this normal? Is this just kind of like, hey, you say tomato, I say tomato? Or have we really gotten beyond polarization to embracing ideas that just don't work?
I got to be honest with you. I think about this to some degree daily. And, I'm old enough to have been around kind of before it was this bad, for lack of a better term. And I think part of the problem is we currently live in a society that feels, and again, I don't exactly know where it came from, but we currently live in a society that feels like it needs to respect everyone's opinion. And now we have the ability to share our opinion. Our opinions used to be shared only to the people pretty much within earshot. Now you have the ability to put out an opinion from your phone walking on the street, and everyone in the world hear and or see it. And there's this massive tie to respect all opinions. And the reality is, if it's not an opinion that's based in experience and overt, what is truth other than correspondence to reality? And in my opinion, we now have a political side that sees the world the way they want it to be, not the way it is. And that, to me, right there is the fundamental problem.
Really well put, Tyler Gray. I wish I could go on with you, but we're out of time here. Amigos, I want you to get a copy of this book. Get two. It's summertime still. For a few more days, you can get a copy of Forged in Chaos, A Warrior's Origin Story, and get one for a friend. And check out the show. It's on CBS. SEAL Team. Tyler Gray is starring in the program, and he's a former Delta Force operator. Sir, thanks for your service. Thanks for your time tonight. And let everybody know how they can find you on social media.
On social media, Tyler A. Gray, Gray with an E. I have a website, tyleragray.com, Gray with an E. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
You bet. God bless. And amigos, we come back with your thoughts, your calls, your reactions, and so much more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833 833-4VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDES. That's Valdes with an S. Call now, 833-4VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDES. That's Valdes with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And, of course, Open Phone America is on and popping. Give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4VALDES. I want your thoughts and opinions on what's going on in America at night. And let's go to Great Falls, Montana. Check in with Diane on KQDI. Diane, you're on with Rich Valdes. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Rich Valdes. I really appreciate you. I'm calling because about 40 years ago, the Clintons said that we're not allowed to spank our children. So we could never discipline them. We couldn't teach them right from wrong correctly. Now, the people that have taught transgender also teach confusion. Those are the real criminals behind the criminals. The ones that are teaching this are the ones that need to be looked at.
Really good
and
point.
People out there that are buying videos that shoot other people, all the parents, take a look at yourselves. What are you doing and what are you teaching? Now, if you want to know what a good parent is, ask this question. Did your mother and father teach you to lie? Does your mother and father teach you confusion? Does your mother and father teach you to cheat? None of these things. And the first thing...
What do you think caused all of this dereliction, Diane?
The teachings. Our teachings in school, our teachings through the AI, the laws that have been passed. We've never voted on these. Where's our voting rights to decide whether we can spank our child or not?
Yeah.
Now,
Well, you know what? I think you're onto something with the spanking. I think you're probably right, since it's become taboo to spank your children, contrary to the Bible, right? Spare the rod, spoil the child. I think people have, by and large, been giving in to their children, allowing their children to call the shots, which ultimately has caused this, I don't know, instant gratification type of society where there's no consequence to anything. There's no accountability for one's actions. And you've got kids that will literally resort to killing people if they don't get their way or they're upset. And, you know, I can tell you, being upset is a part of life. And, you know, I'm not good at it either, but I'm not going out and shooting anybody. So I think you're right. There's a lot that we have to take a look at. And so much of this is really stemming from parents just not being parents. And you're right. What are we teaching our children? Very, very good set of questions there for people to ask themselves. And I appreciate the call, Diane. Thanks for calling in. I hope you'll call in again soon. KQDI in the building. Let us continue. Let's go to David. He's calling us from Lansing, Michigan, WILS. David, what's up?
Hi, Rich. It's a pleasure to talk with you. I just want to speak to the fact that young people don't understand the sacrifices that were made by the previous people that came before, and especially, you know, in the military. My cousin was Hispanic, went to Vietnam twice. He re-enlisted, even though he didn't have to. He was a forward observer and was given a boatload of medals and sacrificed for his country. And he came back. He was killed in a car accident, unfortunately, when he came back.
Well, I thank him for his service. I thank your family for his dedication to our country, and, of course, mourn the loss of his life.
Yes. But he told me stories you couldn't have believed. He would go out in the jungle at night. He would see tigers. You know, he would eat monkey meat. He would just sacrifice, you know.
Wow.
For his country.
Sounds like eating whatever came his way if you're out there and you're hiding from the bad guys. Listen, I tell you, you're right. People don't understand the commitment of those that came before them. And I think that's true of most generations. Probably so evident now that we're so removed from so much of the hardship. The other day I was talking to a buddy of mine. We were at the beach, and he was talking with his wife, and we were all having this conversation about how well we are doing now compared to like when we were all little kids. And I remember when we were little kids, it wasn't uncommon to have a car that was 15 or 20 years old. Some people didn't have cars at all, you know, in the 1980s where I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. And I can tell you that today, I don't know anybody who doesn't have a car. Everybody has a car. And it's just, poverty's just not even the same anymore. You know, people talk about people are poor. It's not the same kind of poor I experienced growing up. And I think that's part of why the young people don't understand. They've grown up with so much ease of use, so much facility, so much access that it's difficult for them to have this appreciation because they don't know what it's like to be without. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it definitely has its ups and its downs. David in Lansing, very good point. Shout out to WILS Michigan. And amigos, we're coming right back. The rest of your calls, Connecticut, Idaho, Ohio, and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdes keeping you company all night long. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdes. And we're talking about the shooting in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We're talking about the National Guard all over the country. We're talking about all of the issues affecting America, especially those that are affecting America at night. And Rich Valdes, again, happy to be with you. Let us go to Peggy, calling us from New Franklin, Ohio, WNIR. Peggy, go right ahead.
Hi. I kind of like to play devil's advocate a little bit here.
Sure.
And don't get me wrong. I have lost a child. I understand how horrible, how terrible, how awful, how inhumane this is. But I've also been hearing, and I, like everything else in this world, I don't know if it's true, but I've been hearing that this guy, whose name was Robert, changed his name to Robin and was transitioning. Do you know if that's true?
Yes, according to several reports, including the New York Post that I just read a little while ago, he was born Robert and has changed his name legally at the age of 17 to Robin and now identifies as a female.
Okay. The church I go to, and I know you're a believer, so you'll get, I think, where I'm coming from.
Mm-hmm.
The church I go to, we add people to our choir from some of the college music groups, like at Easter and Christmas when we're doing bigger cantatas.
Mm-hmm.
As it turned out, several of these young people left our church in tears because they were accepted and they were LGBTQ people. And I'm wondering if this young person who did this horrible, horrible thing was turned away by...
Right, if he was shunned or ostracized. I don't know the answer to that, but I do know we have to help people who are ill get the help they need, and we can't make excuses for them. I'm Rich Valdes.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdes, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdes.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdes, Valdes with an S, at Rich Valdes on all of the social media. Welcome to another hour of the program. It is Wednesday night. They call this Hump Day, and we are live and national. The phone number, if you want to join us on our late night national town hall conversation, give me a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDES. And I want to... Again, just thank you for allowing me to be on the airwaves with you guys. We have a conversation with Curtis Sliwa that is Don't Miss Radio. And in that conversation, something I did not mention, and I'm going to mention to you, is that Curtis Sliwa is getting a Lifetime Achievement Award at the upcoming Barrett News Media BNM Summit in New York City. I'm also honored to be presenting at that conference. And I think it's important that we, you honor people for doing what they do. And again, Curtis, and I talk about Curtis, I'm very bullish on Curtis's candidacy, not only because I know the guy, but because I know what he's done and what he can do for New York City. Now, something that we need, right, is steady leadership, people that are focused on making crime better. And those are all things I think Curtis has done for a very long time with his role as the leader of the Guardian Angels, the founder of the Guardian Angels, starting it in the Bronx, spreading it all through New York City, spreading it through many states in America, up to I forget how many cities internationally. And you need stuff like that. You need it because things like what happened today happen, right? You've got this terrible situation in Minneapolis, the slaughter of 2 children being shot by a deranged transsexual murderer who went and became a mass shooter at a school, a Catholic school, while they were in mass. They were praying for back to school. And he kills these people. He kills these 2 little kids. He shoots more. I mean, really just brutal reality. And you can't eliminate all crime. I understand. You can reduce it. You can curtail it. You can discourage it. You can let the bad guys know we're watching. We're on to you. We're on the job. When you let the bad guys know that you're absentee, you're not on the job, you're asleep at the wheel, well, guess what? The bad guys have a free-for-all. They go to town. And they go, oh, you know what? I'm not going to do anything anyway. Let's go ahead and do this. And that's what we're seeing. And sadly, I can't find a Republican to blame this on. They're all Democrats. In particular, they're all progressive Democrats that all share the same ideology as every district attorney candidate that George Soros has supported. Look at that. Right? Again, George Soros is the guy who figured out that instead of changing the laws and lobbying to make laws better and change things for what he feels is a problem of inequity, in particular with black men in prison, he said, you know what? Instead of trying to change the system, I'm just going to change the players. And with all of his billions of dollars, he said, you know what? I'm going to fund attorneys that are going to do everything they can to look the other way on crime if such crimes are being created by black men, even if we have to just change laws in the process. And that's what they've done. They created these no cash bail laws saying that this was racist, that, if you were black or poor, that you had to be in jail longer than somebody who was rich or white because they had money for bail and you didn't. And while that may make sense to, your 3-year-old, your 2-year-old, your 4-year-old, anybody with a mind that can pause and think for a second, will say, look, in real life, everybody comes from a different background. You and I both have the same opportunity, black or white, Hispanic, Asian, it doesn't matter. We all have the same right to go ahead and park where it says no parking tollway zone. Whether we're poor, whether we're rich, you name it, we have the same right to break the law. Now, you can't start complaining once you've already chosen to break the law when the other guy broke the law, but he's got the money to bail himself out, and you don't. That, my friends, is not how it works. You don't get to say, well, I don't want bail. I don't want to have to give you cash in order to ensure that I'm coming back because it's unfair that he's got the cash for it. So therefore, he can commit these crimes, and it's easier for him to get bail and then show back up at court for his day in court. And it's not easy for me. You could make that same argument with the no parking sign and say, look, that guy parks there. He doesn't care if he gets a ticket or if he gets towed because it's only a few $100 and he can afford it. Okay, but you still had the same opportunity to park there, right? It was up to you to break the rules, yes or no. You parked in the no parking knowing you were broke. So now I'm going to say, if you go and you commit crime and you do a stick up and you're like, well, no, they caught me and, now I got to be here until my court date because I don't have bail. Is that on me? Is that on anybody else? Or is that on you? Obviously, it's on you. You can't sit there and say, well, if they weren't charging me for bail, I'd be out like the other guy. You could say that, but it wouldn't matter because if it weren't for everybody else that didn't commit a crime that day, you could have done what they did, not commit a crime. And this is the silliest argument in the world when you have people trying to make this case. So what we do, Andrew Cuomo, cashless Cuomo, as Curtis Sliwa dubbed him, cashless Cuomo decides we're going to put in a whole law, and I'm going to sign it, that says this type of attempted murder, this type of sexual assault, this type of home invasion, whatever crimes, and those are all crimes that were part of that. They are all the type of crimes where you can look the other way. And now you say, oh, no, it's all right. Just make sure you show up to court. We're going to give you a desk appearance ticket. What many have nicknamed a disappearance ticket because these people never show back up. They'd rather live with a warrant than have to show up. Why? Because they know they're going to get in trouble. They were caught on camera. There was witnesses. It's that simple. So what do we do? Well, I think part of the issue here is we've got to stop allowing the media and the left and anybody else to make the case that it's okay to be a radical and that it's somehow unfair to hold people on bail. It's not. And saying that it's racist doesn't make it any more stupid of an argument. Don't do crime and you won't be faced with the prospect of having to pay bail. It's that simple. You know how many people out there have been broke at one point or another in their lives? And I'm pretty sure at some point somebody said, no, I'm not going to do that. Watch me mess around and get locked up and then I won't have money for bail. It doesn't matter what color you are. Somebody like that in every race has sense. This is about having sense. This is not about a racial policy. This is a stupid policy. And way before we had a stupid policy like that, we've had radicals. I mean, we've had some serious radicals. We're talking about this homegrown terrorism today, this person, the attack on Christianity, the murder of 2 children at a Catholic school. We're talking about all the craziness that we see going on in big cities across America, crime that's flooding the streets in our big cities run by Democrats, turning a blind eye because they agree with George Soros, that if we just stop prosecuting people and soften up the laws, then we won't have so many minorities in prison. Yeah, real smart, bro. How about trying to help minorities to make money so they're not faced with as much poverty, so maybe they don't want to live a life of crime? Right? Because that's the reality. People don't wake up and say, I want to be a drug dealer. People would wake up and say, I want to be an X, Y, and Z if it were easier to get to. When drug dealer seems like, or a gang member or whatever the streets can offer you, when that seems like the best way out, the most affordable, most accessible way, that's why they do well. But we all know that's not a winning strategy. So why do we embrace terrorists? Well, I don't think we do, but sadly the Democrats do. And I want to talk about terrorists, in particular a terrorist bomb plot in New York City that you've heard about, likely, if you've been listening to me for any number of years. We've talked about this before, but it's recently been featured on the Law and Order Criminal Justice podcast, Season 2, Episode 1, to be exact, the Fraunces Tavern bombing. And we're going to speak with someone who actually lost their dad in the Fraunces Tavern bombing back in the 1970s in New York City. So don't go anywhere. Keep it locked right here. I'm Rich Valdes.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
Look at Rich Valdes. He's now a radio host, and he's a great radio host.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, amigos, welcome back. It's Rich Valdes keeping you company on the late night radio airwaves here. And I want to do a little bit of a flashback to 1975, Fraunces Tavern, New York City. It's bombed by members of a terrorist organization, a spinoff of the Weather Underground here in the United States, but they're known as FALN. And this is a group that advocates for Puerto Rico to become its own independent country. And this is a position that is held by many in the Democrat Party, not the least of which is my least favorite congresswoman from the Bronx and Queens, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, all out crazy. And sadly, this is the position of the communists, right? Communists believe that they are oppressed and the United States is the guilty, evil empire, and that everything should be free from the United States. Now, I could sit here for hours and explain to you why that's not accurate, especially in Puerto Rico, but I'm going to play you a clip, and it's a clip of Diana Berger Ettenson. She's the widow of a man that was killed in 1975 in Fraunces Tavern, and she shares a little bit about her story as you also hear a little bit about this report, and to your surprise, you might find out that none other than a couple of years back, then President Obama deciding to honor this man at the New York City Puerto Rican parade, a bomber. Listen to this.
Prepare to honor our heroes this Memorial Day weekend. Organizers of New York's Puerto Rican Day Parade are preparing to honor an unapologetic terror leader released from prison under the Obama administration.
Diana Berger Ettenson lost her husband in one of those bombings carried out by Lopez's terror organization, and she joins us now live. First of all, our condolences to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
You're quite welcome.
Diana, to you, he is no hero. Share your story. What happened?
My husband was at a business meeting January 24th, 1975, at Fraunces Tavern, the FALN, of which Oscar Lopez Rivera was a leader, placed a bomb in the restaurant which exploded, killing 4 people, my husband among them.
And just to let people know, FALN is a fanatic terror organization. They had been working to, I guess, free Puerto Rico from the grips of the United States of America, which it is a territory here. This was their method of doing so, and they committed over 100 bombings. Just tell me, how outrageous is it to think that this man is going to be leading a parade in New York City after he bombed a tavern in Lower Manhattan, 40 years ago, and killed 4 people?
Well, my feeling is that his being honored by being Grand Marshal of the parade is an absolute disgrace. And particularly that it's happening in New York, where the FALN really had a reign of terror that affected all aspects of life in New York in the 70s and the early 80s. And for him to be considered a hero is, to me, is just unfathomable.
It is unfathomable. And again, this FALN, it's Spanish for Fuerzas Armadas Liberación Nacional Puertorriqueña, right? The Armed Forces for National Liberty. And again, this is a group similar to the Confederacy that wanted to break apart from the United States. Very, very similar, right? The same ideology that was championed by the radicals that embraced Pedro Albizu, who you saw them take over the police station in Jayuya. We talked about that on this program not that long ago, that the United States actually had to fly in the military and bomb this police station that was taken over by these guys. It was an armed uprising. These guys were not playing. And it's crazy to think that anyone would embrace radicals like this. But here we are in America where we think that they're just another political party, that AOC or Oscar Rivera Lopez or any of these radical communist terrorists are anything but what they really are, right? Because their actions speak louder than any words is beyond me. But I want to continue this conversation with somebody who's a direct descendant of another person that was killed. And we're going to hear his story. We have a couple of minutes before the break. I want to bring him in, and then we're going to continue this on the other side. Our guest is joining us tonight. He's been with us before, and I'm glad he's back. Joe Conner. He's an author, and he's an advocate against terrorism. And he's got a book called Shattered Lives, Overcoming the Fraunces Tavern Terror. Joe Conner, welcome back, my friend.
Thanks, Richie. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. And I apologize to you for my long-winded introduction, but I wanted to make sure that people really understood how serious this is and how far it goes back, because these communist sympathizing terrorists are not new with AOC or Ilhan Omar or many of these people that are that flock together. And this stuff that went down is just beyond the pale. So I'm going to, rather than get you started and then have to come back to you, I'm just going to, we're going to go to the break now, and we'll come right back, and we'll take it from the top with you, because I think it's an amazing story, a sad story, and an important story. So, amigos, again, we're on with Joe Conner. He's author. He's an advocate against terrorism. He's got the book Shattered Lives. I believe there's a film as well by the same name. Check out his website, shatteredlives.us. He's coming up right now with me. And his story, his dad's story, the 1975 Fraunces Tavern and LaGuardia bombings were mentioned on the Law & Order podcast, Season 2, Episode 1. And we're going to talk about that. So don't go anywhere. It's Rich Valdes coming right back with Joe Conner.
He's brown, he's bald, and he's breaking it down. It's America at Night with Rich Valdes.
Behind us, the Fraunces Tavern at 54 Pearl Street was bombed. This attack shook the city, and today at 11 o'clock, there is a lunch followed by a press conference that is for the families of the victims and the police who responded that day. Now, no one was ever charged, and some family members have continued a decades-long quest for justice. On that day, a Wall Street crowd was having lunch when explosives detonated, killing 4 people, injuring dozens, and severely damaging the building. A plaque inside still honors those victims. Frank Connor, a 37-year-old banker, was one of the victims, and his son Joseph Connor has fought for decades to hold those responsible accountable. The FALN, a terrorist group seeking Puerto Rican independence, claimed responsibility for the attack. And officials say the man believed to be the chief bomb maker, William Morales, escaped U.S. custody and fled to Cuba. Family of victims are calling on the Trump administration to extradite William Morales, and they're also calling for stronger sanctions against Cuba. The Connor family and other families of victims hoping that this 50th anniversary marks new momentum that can bring them one step closer to closure.
So that is a clip that really brings us right to the heart of what we're talking about. We're on with Joe Connor, the surviving son of one of those that was killed in this blast in 1975. And Joe Connor, the floor is yours. You can take us through, A, what happened, laying out the story, B, the impact on you and your family, C, your advocacy work beyond that, and D, what brought you on the Law and Order podcast. Take it away.
Sure. Thanks, Rich. Thanks for having me. And I saw you had Deanie on before, Deanie Berger Edison, and she's a tremendous person and a great family. I feel terrible for her loss of her husband. She was pregnant, and her son never got to meet his dad.
Damn.
But, my father was murdered on January 24th, 1975. We were going to be celebrating my 9th birthday and my brother's 11th birthday that night. And he never came home. He was 33 years old, a New York City kid. He got a job at the Morgan Bank at a high school. His mom, my grandmother, was a cleaning lady there, and she got him the job so he wouldn't be a cop or a fireman, so he'd have a safe job. So on that day, he went out for lunch with clients. A suspicious-looking man walked a package, if you wanted to call it that, or some sort of duffel bag into Fraunces. And for those of you who may know, Fraunces Tavern is where the Sons of Liberty met. It's where George Washington bade farewell to his officers after the Revolutionary War. It's a staple in American history and American liberty. It was specifically chosen for that reason. Shortly after the guy walked the package in, it detonated, and 4 men were murdered. 3 were at the table with my dad, including my dad, and 1 was upstairs in a place called the Anglers Club. The bomb went through the floor of the Anglers Club above and killed the guy in his chair. It was a horrific attack, and it was one of about 130 bombs that the FALN blew up in the U.S. between 1974 and 1983. They were the most prolific terror organization ever to wage war against the United States. My dad was sorry. It was. You go from going to be celebrating your 9th birthday as a little kid and having a great family event, and you find out that night as the guys from his job showed up that he was dead. The name of the book and the movie are Shattered Lives, because it does shatter the kids or anyone's life. My mom's, my brother, my grandmother. But we went on, and we honored my dad by doing the best we could. And my brother and I went to college. My mom went back to school and ended up graduating from college the same day my brother did, her son. So we went on, and it was very cool. Yeah, it was. My mom was an Irish immigrant. She had no family here, and except my grandmother, her mother-in-law, and so my dad. My grandmother Connor was just a tremendous person, and she was there with my mom, and my mom ended up remarrying sometime later. But she, we went on with our lives and did the best we could, and. In 1999, when Hillary Clinton was running for senator from New York, Bill Clinton offered executive clemency to the FALN members. They didn't request it. They didn't ask for it. As a matter of fact, they turned it down. And that was August 11th, 1999. They were given 30 days to accept the clemency. Eric Holder was Clinton's kind of, architect of this clemency release, and Holder allowed the terrorists to speak between prisons, and eventually on September 10th, 1999, they all but Oscar Lopez Rivera, who you mentioned before, accepted the clemency and walked out of prison, just almost to the day, 2 years before 9/11.
Let me just give a little insight to that, because
Sure.
you made a really valid point. I want to make sure everybody caught it.
Sure.
Bill Clinton was using the future Attorney General, Eric Holder, who served under Barack Obama, to negotiate and to offer clemency, to reduce the sentences for these people that were bombing federal buildings and killing people.
Yes, that's
I don't
correct.
know why anybody would give, this is not fraud. This is not a reality star. These are murderers using bombs to kill people. Communists. Like there's no more, a little bit communist. They're very communist.
They were communists. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to make this point really clear, that Holder goes on to become the Attorney General under Barack Obama, who eventually have enough respect for, who's equally, I guess, as radical as they are, that they say, yes, we'll take the offer from him. And this is just boggles the mind how bought in people are to these movements.
Yeah. I mean, I ended up testifying at Eric Holder's Senate confirmation hearing in 2009 about his enrollment, his involvement in the release of the FALN. And one of my points was anybody that would get involved in releasing terrorists in exchange for votes would do anything. And I think, as a matter of fact, that was true. And, we went on to see the further weaponization of the Justice Department under Holder, and that has continued all through the Biden administration. So a lot of the things that we see now and that are coming to the fore, that the Trump administration is bringing up, has its roots with Eric Holder.
They paved the way for the AOCs and all of the other radicals, the Mamdanis and everybody else that's ruining America today. They were paving the way for them back in the 90s in the Clinton administration.
That's correct.
And it is outrageous to me that they were able to get away with it, that people don't see through this. I don't care how Democrat you want to be, how pro-choice you want to be. Nobody should be pro-terrorist. Nobody should be pro-communist. These are things that are antithetical to American liberty, and I just don't understand how anybody embraces this stuff, Joe Connor.
Well, you're 100% right, but the mitigant is votes and money, and this is what Clinton was looking to get Hillary to be the U.S. senator from New York, and that power, that votes, trumped, no pun intended, everything for the Clintons and for Eric Holder. And I actually confronted Eric Holder years later at an event in D.C. He didn't remember who I was, but I sure as hell knew who he was. And he lied, of course. They had the long prison terms. That's why we released them. But that was complete BS. They were in prison for 17 years. They were sentenced between 30, 40, 50, up to 70 years. Some of these guys. So the 17 years that they served was nothing. Now, Oscar Lopez, as we talked about, he refused the clemency. He stayed in prison. We went to his parole hearing and went with Deanie, who you were interviewing before, who you had a clip of her speaking before. Mm-hmm. And we went to Terre Haute to the parole hearing. We kept him in. And then Obama gave him a second clemency on his last day in office in January 20th, 2017. So then Lopez gets out, and then your other clips had him becoming the freedom hero at the Puerto Rican Day Parade. And they announced it at the World Trade Center, the Freedom Tower, the very place that was attacked by terrorists. They announced that a terrorist would be the freedom hero at the Puerto Rican Day Parade. Now, fortunately, at that point, I was able to stop, or a group of us was able to stop him from being the freedom hero. We went to Goya Foods, who pulled their sponsorship, the New York Times, Coca-Cola. They all pulled their sponsorship if he was going to be the freedom hero. So they did pull that, but he still marched in the parade. So
Yep,
it was,
and that was
it was
just
really
to give a
more
little
semantical
context.
than anything.
That was because of the Speaker of the New York City Council, an AOC radical like herself. Before AOC, there was Melissa Mark Viverito.
Viverito, yep.
And she is a commie, a Mamdani-styled commie, a de Blasio-styled commie.
Right.
And these communists, they look out for one another because they hate the United States. They hate the founding of this country. And they absolutely despise anything related to American liberty. And this is why they oppose it. Joe Connor,
I confronted her at an event.
I need you to hold on for a
second
second so we can take a pause right here. And we're going to come right back to continue with your confrontation of Melissa Mark Viverito. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S.
I want to say thank you for what you do. You people speak the truth.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, amigos, we are back with Joe Connor. He's the author of Shattered Lives, Overcoming the Fraunces Tavern Terror and Attack. And I want to come back to him so we can wrap this up and you can learn more about all the work he's doing. Joe Connor, take it away.
Sure. I think, we don't have much time. I think what we want to focus
I know you
now,
left off with confronting Melissa Mark Viverito.
Yeah, I did. I was at an event at Gracie Mansion some years ago, and I confronted her and Jose Lopez, Oscar Lopez's brother. And I thought she was going to either hit me or bite me. I mean, when I said, I'm Joe Connor, and I said, you support Oscar Lopez, the terrorist. And she turned, and it was like I was looking into the face of a serpent. I mean, it was crazy. And it was like a hiss. It was like something out of a movie. And I'm like, whoa, I don't know where this is going. And so her people came and kind of moved her along. But it was pretty nuts. So it was, it was pretty much what I thought could happen, and it did. But we're dealing with these communist people. They have no morals. They have no empathy for the American people. They live on power. And the last point that I want to raise is there's one of the terrorists. His name is William Morales, and he's in Cuba. You mentioned him before. He escaped from prison, and he's been a guest of the Castro regime and Canal regime now in Cuba for decades. And we have a bill in front of the Senate called the Frank Connor Warner Trooper Forster Justice Act. And that's named for my dad and for Warner Forster. He was a New Jersey state trooper who was murdered by Santa Shakur.
By Shakur.
Yeah, a.k.a. Joanne Chesimard. And so, Marco Rubio put up the bill, and now he's obviously the Secretary of State. So it's gone to Senator Rick Scott, and others have endorsed it, and Rubio's on board as Secretary of State. So we believe that we have a chance to pass this bill, which would demand their return. But having Rubio as Secretary of State, and he's just been terrific on all fronts, as you know. And
well, Joe, I want to make sure we have time to make sure everybody knows how they can support you as you support this bill and the work that you're doing. Give everybody the website. How do they find you?
You can get me. My main website is wewinamerica.com. Wewinamerica.com. The movie and book are on shatteredlives.us. And I'm Joseph F. Connor at Joseph F. Connor on X or Twitter at Joseph F. Connor. So you can find all my information there. We have letter campaigns to our senators and congressmen with templates on the websites and stuff. So
it's amazing work that you're doing, brother. Please, folks, give them a follow, help them out, sign the petition. If you hate commies as much as I do, you want to make sure that justice actually is done. Joe Connor, you are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Of course, my heart goes out to your family. Thank you for fighting the good fight. God bless you, my man. And amigos, your thoughts, your calls, your opinions are all coming up right now. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night. Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdes continuing with open phones across America. We've got calls from every corner of the country. I want to go to Washington, Pennsylvania. That's near Pittsburgh. KDKA. Let's check in with Ron. Go right ahead, sir.
Hey, my question is that you softballed that the guy from that was in Afghanistan. You should have asked him where the Afghani army was. Okay.
Well, I think we know. We know where they were, sir. The Taliban was slaughtering them. The Taliban had taken over, and we decided to go in and allow the Taliban to do what they had to do and killing these people. And we got all of our stuff out and said, hey, by the way, keep all the weapons, keep all the vehicles, keep all of everything. And that's what happened. And in the process, we got a bunch of our people killed. It was an absolute disaster. So I don't think it was a softball, but I'll take it. Thank you, Ron. I appreciate the call. Thanks for tuning in as well. KDKA in the building. Let us continue. Paul, Zanesville, Ohio, WHIZ. Paul, what's up, my man?
Hey, good evening, Rich. You know, you and I went we went at it before about this, but in light of what happened today with the 2 children getting killed and all those people getting injured, Rich, why would a guy go in? And what I'm getting to is I know I'm a proponent of the Second Amendment, okay? I do believe you should be able to bear arms. But why would this guy need to buy a shotgun, a rifle, and a pistol? You know, I mean, he's not doing target practice with a .45 caliber pistol, okay? Now, my question to you is, what can be done to stop this? I mean, it blows my mind, Rich, and I'm on your side, with the conservative.
No, listen, I know you are. You know why? Because your heart's in the right place, Paul. I'm going to say this. One, I don't know the legality of all of these guns and what they were, but assuming they were legal, and to me, there's so many people in my family alone that have more guns than this guy had, and they've never shot up anything that they weren't supposed to shoot up. So this is why I can never get behind those things. The reality is when you go into D.C. right now, right? President Trump is in D.C. or he's got the National Guard there and federal law enforcement. They're taking guns away from guys who've never applied for a gun license, right? And they're also shooting people up. So the bad guys are always going to find a way to get a gun. Can they get a gun legally? In some cases they can, and they do. It's never going to be an issue of stopping access to guns because crazy people are going to do what crazy people do irrespective. I think the bigger part of this is helping people that we know are crazy or not doing well to be better. Brother, thanks for the call. I appreciate it. Shout out to WHIZ. Shout out to WLAD. Shout out to WKCT. Otis and Joe. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. And God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdes.